Welcome, everybody. You have joined us for the 2 p.m. Pacific time session for the Peralta Online Equity Conference. You're in room A, which means you're here for encouraging equity and engagement through ePortfolios in the age of AI. Think all the big words in that start with a vowel. We're good. Then we have a crew of people, all highly talented. Amy Cicchino, Theresa Conefrey, Kristina Hoeppner, myself, Kevin Kelly, and Christine Slade from multiple countries and time zones here to share with you a number of ideas. But before we do, I have a couple of housekeeping notes for you all. One, the captions are on for your benefit, so please feel free to use them if you like. You just have to go down to the Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom window and select either the caption button, or if you don't see it, it might be hidden under that More button with the 3 dots. And then when the menu comes up, you choose captions, turn them on for yourself. Next, we have a panel here ready to share their ideas, but we know that you are bringing ideas to this presentation as well, and we encourage you to use the chat early and often. Introduce yourself, share resources that you love, ask questions if you have them. Please use the chat, and we're excited to have you here. Last but not least, we are being recorded, so hello to all of you watching the recording right now. We wish you could have been here, but we're glad you're watching us now. We will have pathways for asynchronous communications as well, and we'll set those up and share them with everyone at the conference. But right now, we are here and in the same Zoom room, so I'm going to hand the microphone over to Christine to get us started.
Thanks, Kevin, and welcome everybody. So yes, rather a long title, but really it's around equity and engagement in ePortfolios. And of course, this is the age of artificial intelligence. So thank you. The table of contents for what we're doing today is kind of full, but we are looking for your participation as well. So I'll be giving the introduction, and then we'll be looking at some other examples, activities, etc. So the introduction. Well, it has been a very tumultuous year and a half, I guess, since we had the public access to generative AI through ChatGPT. Next slide, please. And this was my very, I suppose, candid or simplistic idea of 4 themes that actually came out of that. And I was just going to share them, but I can see so much how they relate to ePortfolio pedagogies. And I'm quite excited that we can actually use and enhance our pedagogies for ePortfolios using generative AI. So the first one that I saw in Australia when I'm in charge of assessment and academic integrity across our institution was the effect, the impact, the emotional impact of generative AI. And we had people that were either from one end of the spectrum to being doomsdayers, really, that it was going to be terrible, to those that actually were so excited they could hardly wait to actually use it. And so we had people right across that continuum, and we had to deal with that, I think, as a sector first. But then it became a little bit more nitty-gritty. So in Australia, we had concern over integrity. So people were very concerned that students were going to use AI for misconduct. So they were going to be able to get an advantage over students. There was also concern about overdependence. So, you know, one minute we have this new technology and next everyone's saying, be careful because you might become overdependent on using it. Just can't win. And the other probably key thing for educators were that if you used it too much, you wouldn't be actually learning. So they were sort of initial things. But then it became more serious in the fact that we really knew that this wasn't just for computer scientists, so they already had literacy, but all of us would actually have to have some literacy skills, knowing and understanding, for starters, what this actually could do and what still can do, like as it evolves, how to use it, how to apply, and then, of course, which relates very much to ePortfolios, is how to create something in it. So there's a lot of skills there besides digital literacy skills that we have to have for ourselves as educators, but also for teaching our students. And then the last one, which is quite exciting for portfolios, is assessment design. So we are, as a sector here, are struggling still, I think, with how to implement artificial intelligence into our assessment design. And we've seen lots of examples of how to do that, but we are still in the process of actually really transforming our assessment. And the lovely part about ePortfolios is that it's a very easy way to have the creators show how they the process of learning they did while they were creating the end product. So having those two components is a really useful way of using generative AI, because ePortfolios can show all of that through the tasks as they're scaffolded across. So now I'll hand over to Amy, and she's going to give us some examples. Thank you, Amy.
I think it might be me.
Oh, sorry, it had Amy.
No worries.
Sorry, Kevin.
I would hand it to Amy any day of the week. So
I saw Amy's name as well.
building on some of the ideas that Christine just brought up, for example, the affective impact of generative AI. So Jennifer Elliman, who spoke earlier today, brought up this idea, and she's here in the participant list as well. So hopefully she'll chime in with ideas. But also the idea of concern over integrity. And so when we get to our first example on the next slide, you can see that we imagine and we know that an emerging trend in using artificial intelligence to support ePortfolio practice involves things like text improvement. And some people may make the leap that that text improvement actually means text replacement or text generation, so that we're worried that our students are not just using Grammarly, which is an AI-backed tool, but using ChatGPT or Claude to actually generate their results. And it was just this week that Dr. Denise Maduli-Williams, who's one of our poster presenters, I encourage you to go check out her pre-recorded poster presentation, but on LinkedIn this week, she has been saying, when discussing AI, talk to students, trust the students. And so she teaches English as a second or other language, ESOL, and she asked some of her students about the use of AI. And here are just a few examples that she shared about how her students are using AI for text improvement. Finding synonyms for words, so I wasn't using the same word over and over, especially important for English language learners. One person said, despite my progress learning English, I continue to struggle with grammatical accuracy. So a chance to check in with a neutral source to make sure that what you're typing is correct. Using it as a spell and grammar check. Did not really use AI for the writing portion, but I did use it to help me brainstorm. So thinking about that fear that we saw in the earlier slide, and the idea that students really want to use it in authentic, but also, let's say, accurate or responsible ways is something that we hope will continue to be the trend. When we see the next item of accessibility, artificial intelligence is supporting us by allowing us to remediate resources that we post or that our students post to their portfolios in ways that make them more accessible. Perhaps identifying that you've used bold and 16-point font and automatically converting that to header number 1 or header number 2. We also know that some tools, and I don't know how many ePortfolio platforms follow in this suit, but are able to generate alternative formats of particular content. So let's say you have a video, we know that you can have a transcript easily through artificial intelligence and voice recognition, but in some cases it can go in the opposite way, and based on a block of text, it can create a video. Graphic design and layout support is getting more sophisticated so that it can help students not only present their work in ways that demonstrate the progress over time, whether it be over 2 years at a community college, over 4 years after a transfer, or being a native student all 4 years at a university, But also imagine you're a fashion design student and you want to display your work in ways that professionals might see it and consider that a bridge to career type activity. Other emerging trends that there aren't as many examples, skills mapping. Please review all the pages of this electronic portfolio and identify the skills that are demonstrated through the artifacts that are placed there. Media editing, self-explanatory, but it is possible for people who don't have the skills to, let's say, edit a video or edit an audio, to lean on artificial intelligence to trim the ends, to cut out the amplified static or any other commands or prompts you might consider. And then the last one, again, I'm interested to see more examples of this in action, but there are plenty of articles that talk about using artificial intelligence not only to generate content, as I've described earlier, but to curate it so that you are creating a pathway. I like to say light up the runway for the stakeholders who are looking at the portfolio. So on the next slide, you can see that we have some ethical considerations around these uses of AI. And I think that we want to make sure we're being level-headed about this and that it is both students and instructors, and for some campus leaders, these ethical considerations are not just restricted to students. Data privacy is something we all need to worry about, making sure we're informing students of the ramifications of using AI, making sure that the people who are organizing contracts with tools or platforms that use AI to make sure that privacy is part of that conversation, recognizing ownership, authorship, and authenticity. We know that chatbots and generative artificial intelligence does not always do a good job of recognizing the sources that it uses to synthesize large amounts of information. So ownership, authorship, and authenticity can get lost when we take ideas that are generated by AI and used for other purposes. For those people who are not familiar with the Digital Ethics Task Force from a group called the Association of Authentic, Experiential, and Evidence-Based Learning, or AAEEBL, they came up with a set of principles. Everybody on this panel is a part of that group. But DEIBD stands for diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and decolonization. And so one aspect, one consideration of using artificial intelligence is how are we addressing biases that emerge when we use, again, something that popped up in other AI-related sessions today, when we're using data that's trained on, used to train the AI engine, and it's not quite representative of everybody in our classrooms. We have to consider those types of issues as well. The last three, are we outsourcing our thinking and reflecting, or using it as a clever prompt to make sure that we're actually doing more than writing down our thoughts? We're actually going through a reflective behavior. Are we removing barriers to access and training? We know cost is an issue. We know availability of different technologies can be an issue. And then for instructors or students who are asked to do peer review, are we using AI basically as an outsourced mechanism to give students feedback? My own students, when I asked them about their thoughts on using AI, they were very clear. We pay tuition. We want the teachers to give us the feedback on our work. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to the next person in the lineup.
Hello, I believe that is me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about activities for AI as a tool for learning. So full disclosure, I am one of those enthusiasts for experimenting with AI. It's there, students are going to be using it, and I want to learn alongside them, see how they're using it. I teach mostly technical writing. I also teach a little bit of first year composition, and in all my classes, I have a very open AI policy. I encourage students to read the policy, amend it where they see fit. And as we go through our usual assignments, I suggest ways that they can use AI, and I try to discover how they are already using AI so that I can learn a little bit more myself. But I do want to follow on from what Kevin said. All of the issues, I'm part of the digital ethics task force, and we are trying to promote awareness of all aspects of digital ethics. And as we think about using AI, one aspect of awareness is to understand the EULA, the end user licensing agreement. And for my activity then, I've got 2 slides and about 10 minutes. So I'm thinking maybe we could spend 3 minutes on each of these slides. This is from a longer document, the end user licensing agreement, which I've just put in the chat if you want to read the whole of it. For the interest of time, I've just pulled out a section that I think will be relevant for our discussion today, and it's on 2 slides. So we're going to spend 4 minutes, actually no, 3 minutes reading each of the slides. And as you go through it, can you jot down any questions that you might have? And then at the end of these 6 minutes, we'll have a little bit of time for any concerns you might have. And just to kind of cue you in a little bit, following on from what Kevin said, maybe you might notice some comments on accuracy, reusing content, but there might be other areas that are interesting to you as well. So I'm going to stop talking now and give us 3 minutes to read the first slide. And as you read that, I hope you jotted down any questions, concerns you might have had. And let's move to the next slide for another 3 minutes. Okay, that was time. And I'm interested if anybody has any concerns, either from the point of view of using AI in the classroom for ePortfolio creation, or giving students advice for how they might be using using AI in their own ePortfolios. Yeah, so I'm reading Kevin's comment that it's interesting the user is granted ownership of the output when that output may incorporate ideas from others who do not agree to share them. So there is this contradiction that you own the input and output, you're responsible for it, you control it, but on the other hand, it can also be used. And in the slide above, the previous one, it mentioned too that there could be similarity of content. You might possibly recognize some of your own content. Right. Amy is mentioning the copyright issues that this implies. Should we make our students aware of situations where they could possibly be infringing on copyright, accidentally sharing information that they didn't know was protected? Kevin mentioned earlier that we don't know where the information comes from, where exactly, what are the sources of the training data?
Theresa, one other thing while somebody else might be thinking of is that here on this page it says you're responsible for content, including ensuring that it does not violate any applicable law. So that means that the content you put in is not is correct, but also that the content that comes back from the AI doesn't violate any law. But you did not write that content that comes back from the AI, so it can actually violate laws. But it's your responsibility to, if you're using it, then to make sure that it doesn't. And that you also, under the accuracy, always need to double check that it is factual and appropriate and accurate. So there's quite a lot of burden put onto the person,
the user,
to using it. Yeah.
In speaking with some other instructors on campus, student or faculty were concerned, as Kristina alluded to, initially that maybe students could be having AI create content for them rather than using AI to generate ideas, but they could be cutting and pasting content. Concern with that is that then an instructor who wanted to use one of the AI detecting databases, and there are several of them, there are further issues with uploading student content. And related to opting in and out, yeah. I've tried that, and some of my students have tried that. You have to click through several different links in order to opt out. And then there is the concern too that you might not get the best outcome. I personally have only played around on the free version. I don't know how that works if you are paying for a version. Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on, but I would encourage you all to have a look. I know we don't normally read the EULAs. We just scroll to the end because we want to use the software, and there's not any option. You either have to sign it that you read it or not use the software. But it is good to know because when we click that little box, we are responsible. And now I'm going to hand it over to Kristina for another interactive activity.
Thank you, Theresa. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Kristina Hoeppner, and I'm the project lead of Mahara, the open source portfolio platform. And as was said earlier, I'm also a member of the AAEEBL task force, along with Kevin, Theresa, Amy, and Kristina. Usually when we talk about generative AI, we talk about the AI giving us text back. But what we'd like to do with you right now is a short activity in how AI could actually support the reflection and metacognition by asking us questions rather than us asking questions. And so if you want to point your QR code reader to this QR code that you see here on the slide, or if one of my co-presenters can please make sure that the link is also in the chat. Thank you so much, Amy. Then you can be on your way to using Riff. Riff is a reflection bot that was developed by Letizia Pretos Cavagnaro at the D School at Stanford University. And it makes it very easy for educators to ask a question in initial prompt of their students, and then the students reflect. So what I'd like you to do now is to look at that first question. How have you used AI in your teaching and or learning? Reflect on your experience so far and provide some details from a memorable experience or event. Type that. Doesn't have to be a very long paragraph, can be 1 or 2 sentences. Click send and then see what happens. And if you do that a couple of times, then we'll come back together. So just a couple more minutes. Okay, let's come back together. And I hope what you will have seen is that after this initial question and you give it an answer, Riff then uses your input and formulates the next question. It also mirrors back what you had said to a degree, words it slightly differently at times, and then takes you deeper into the reflection. And it can go on and on and on and on and on and on. If you'd like to stop at any point in time, you can click the End Reflection button that you see at the top right-hand corner, and then you have a number of choices. They are not necessarily easy choices, but they are really good ones. So if you'd like to keep that conversation that you had with the bot, then you can ask to have the whole chat log sent, and that it then ends the reflection, finishes it, gives you the prompt again. Or if you'd like to see what Riff does, how Riff sees the conversation and summarizes it, then you can have a summary sent and end the reflection, or you can just end the reflection if you want neither. And I'm choosing the summary end, and so I can just have that sent to my email address, and within a few minutes, I will receive the summary of my session. So before showing you a bit of the back end, what it looks like for an instructor, for a teacher, I'd just like to know what you thought of it. Maybe some of you have used it for the first time. Maybe others have already explored it a bit more. And please do feel free to grab the microphone or talk in the chat.
Kristina, I've used this tool with my students and they like it. Initially, when I used it, I wasn't clear how to end the questioning, and some of the students found that a little bit frustrating, but once it became clear, and as you mentioned, they were happy that they could get the summary of their work. Yeah, and when I let them choose if they wanted to do an ordinary reflection or a reflection, I would say 2/3 preferred the riff, and some like to do both, and then a third wanted to do a non-AI reflection.
Why did the students that opted for the reflection wanted to use that tool instead of doing an ordinary one, as you say?
They liked the questions. They thought that the questions got them to think harder rather than just writing their first thoughts. Although they found it a little bit annoying, maybe, they did like being pushed to think a bit more.
Okay, there's a question in the chat. Do you have them share the output with you?
I do, yeah.
And how do you use it then?
I've had them in discussion posts where there's been reading assignments. You know, we're always trying to figure out new ways to encourage the students to do the readings, and where I've experimented with different ways, and one of them was having students use Riff for their reflections on reading assignments.
Cool.
Oh, and I've also used it for having them reflect on assignments that they've completed, rather than asking them, what did you like about your assignment? What do you think you could have improved? What went well? And so on. I've had them generate that kind of reflection using Riff.
Kevin, do you want to share via the microphone what you've put into the chat?
Sure, for the benefit of those watching the recording, I put that as a professional development activity, I felt this was more comprehensive than following prescribed prompts that are presented linearly on a page, because it's using a branching logic that responds to my input and then gives me something to think about or respond to. It seemed like, again, a more comprehensive approach, and sadly, it also means more work, because I committed to Riff as my accountability buddy that I was going to put 2 forms of instructions for my students, a simplified and detailed version, and then compare the results with what students get in their rubric scores. So I feel like I was tricked into doing more work by Riff.
You can chat with Letizia. Very good question, Julie. In the chat, what input did you provide to for this exercise? And that's why I really, really like the tool and wanted to show you the tool to explore it. Not saying that it is the end all and be all, but like Kevin, I find it is nice, or you get deeper into the reflection because the answers are not the answers, the questions are specific to what you had put in, rather than just having 5 probably relatively generic questions up front that would then work for everybody. And so as educator, what you actually do is when you write the prompt is that you have that intro text that you can change and you have an opening question. Let me just make that slightly bigger for you. And that is all you need. So you could also use other tools to help students reflect, but there you actually need to write a lot of the methodology behind it and give it bigger prompts. Whereas with Riff, because it is made by Dr. Leticia Pretas Cavagnaro at the D School, who has been researching reflection for many, many years, she has put all of that into the background. All that research about reflection goes in. And currently, I think she is still using the framework of what, so what, and now what as reflective framework. But in future, there might be others as well, or maybe at some point you can also put in your own framework. But what all the things you need to do is write an opening question. And if you want to help Riff tailor the responses even more to your cohort, you can provide context where you tell it that it is higher education students, in which country they live. Now you can also type prompts in other languages, or the interface can change in other languages in order for it then to pick those things up. So in one reflection bot that I had created for myself, just to test it out, I give the context that I'm the project lead and product manager. And so sometimes after the second or third turn that Riff took, it kind of came back to that background, even though I did not had mentioned it specifically before. As far as cost goes, yes, the beta version is free. You can sign up for it, and then at some point you will receive an email so you can try it out. And of course, like all the things that Kevin had mentioned before, AI concerns data privacy and security, and also what Theresa had mentioned about the end user licensing agreement. Please do read the terms and conditions and the privacy statement. Currently, none of the input that is being put in by the students is being used for training purposes. And of course, because it is also a Stanford project, and because Leticia created it for education, it is very important to her that this is honored. But of course, not every one of us is living in the United States. Therefore, your country might have different requirements still to using artificial intelligence. Your institution might have specific requirements. So please ensure that you are aware of that you talk with whomever you need to talk at your institution in order to ensure that you're following procedures and also that you're keeping the student data safe. If you want to explore it, you're welcome to continue using the chatbot that I had created, for which you have the link in the chat if you just want to test it out, have a few more runs, maybe even have the same starting response in the chat again and see how it responds, because it is different all the time because it's being generated on the fly. And so, yes, one possibility to use generative AI to help students reflect on what they have been doing, and not just students, but also yourself. And so now let's continue to the next steps, because of course there's lots more that can be done.
Yes. So I hope that we've given you some ideas and some possibilities as you think about AI in your classrooms, especially as it relates to ePortfolios. And so my job is to identify just a few takeaways that we hope came through in today's presentation. So one, we want to support our students in thinking critically about AI tools and technologies. And to Kevin's point, not just our students, right? Our colleagues, our supervisors, upper administrations. We want to make sure we're really thinking about this as a new kind of digital literacy. And so 2 really small things that we can do tomorrow is we can begin reviewing those end user license agreements like Theresa modeled for us. That's something that we can use to start conversations. We can also just question the kinds of data and input that is going into these AI systems and ask questions like, where do those data go? Who owns them, right? What do we risk? This is especially important if we're putting in student information or faculty and staff information, proprietary information. And so those are just 2 really small questions that you can begin asking around your local context to get people thinking critically about AI. But second, as Kristina modeled, we can also lean into the ways that AI can support equity. This includes RIF and generative AI tools that can help prompt reflection and metacognition, or as Kevin raised earlier in the presentation, the AI technologies that can support things like accessible design, that can help us be more accessible and ethical creators ourselves. We also just want to normalize this idea that learning and the process of learning is something that is going to continue to be a challenge for us as it relates to AI. AI is quickly evolving. It is changing month to month, day to day. And so it's okay that we don't have all of the answers immediately, but we just continue to ask good questions and learn together as a community. And finally, ePortfolios are a process. Learning is a process. And so we can still teach in ways that validate and value the process of learning with AI. And so, right, that should be kind of the central anchor to what we're doing. And so with that, I want to pass it over to Kristina, who's going to share a few ways to continue the conversation with us in the coming months.
Thank you so much, Amy, for this wonderful summary and also the next steps. If you are interested or continue to be interested in thinking about artificial intelligence, especially from a portfolio standpoint, but also more in general in education, because of course there's lots of commonalities, we have a number of events coming up for you. The first one, book launch by 2 fantastic authors. One of them is in the room, Kevin Kelly, but then the other one is also Katie Linder, where they talk about their new books that have been released, or that one is coming at the beginning of June. Do join us next week for that, because you can also win a book. And the next 3 events are ePortfolio specific ones. AI in portfolios on the 27th of May, where we are looking at how artificial intelligence can be used for portfolio feedback and assessment. Then a month later, around portfolio practice, where a number of practitioners and researchers share how portfolios are being used, what they have found out over the last year or so, or sometimes even 18 years of portfolio practice. And then last but not least, not yet with a link for registration or call for papers, is the AAEEBL annual meeting that will happen in August, starting on the 14th of August, going until the 16th of August. So we hope to see you at one or more of these upcoming events. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, please feel free to do so. We'd love to talk with you and hear what you are already doing, what you're thinking about. And also, if you want to share some of your practice in one of our AAEEBL webinars, we'd love to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristina, for all that amazing information and the resources, the ways to connect. We do hope that you all will reach out and connect with us or join us for other activities. Immediately following this session, and we usually remind folks that we are recording these, and so you'll be able to find it after we do some cleanup with these captions on YouTube. And so I put the link to the Online Equity Conference playlist on YouTube for 2024. You'll already see the pre-recorded poster sessions there, and soon there will be more to view as we get the recordings up and running. Also, if you're interested in seeing yet another session today, we have another couple of time slots. So here is a link to the conference program at a glance, so you can look at what we're going to do in the next hour. And last but not least, just as Kristina was encouraging you to connect with us via social media and such, the Peralta Online Equity team has a number of sites and or accounts where you can connect with them to talk about all things equity. So on behalf of myself and my colleagues here, we'd love to say thank you for an amazing session. Thank you to all of you in the participant list for joining us. And then we hope that we'll see you again at a session at the next top of the hour. Until then, have a great day.
Thanks.